Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Transforming Cyber Risk Operations and Board Oversight with a Governed Function. My name is Ethan Bresnahan. I'm the Senior Marketing Director here at CyberSaint. And today I'm excited to welcome CyberSaint Co-Founder and Chief Innovation Officer, Patrick O'Reilly, and Rinki Sethi, CISO of Bill.com. We're so glad that you can join us. As always, feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, Patrick and Rinki.
Good to be here, Ethan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I'd like to kick things off with an overview of kind of the rapid changes that we've seen in the technology landscape in the last 2 years. Rinki, I understand that you're not just leading cybersecurity at Bill, but also AI implementation as well. From a high level, what are some learnings that you've taken from the last 2 years since the start of what we're seeing as kind of the ChatGPT era?
Yeah, it's really interesting time that we're in right now, because I remember at the end of last year, beginning of this year, there was this big buzz around AI, and everybody felt like we need to make change and we need to drive innovation around this. And there's a lot of energy around it. And I can say like every leader was like, how are you going to help productivity of my team at Bill? And so there was so much energy around it. And then you realize that, okay, AI is not going to solve everything. There's other ways maybe to solve certain things, but there's been this massive push to innovation. And then a lot more awareness around security, data hygiene, because we want to build AI capabilities into the company. And so it's been a really interesting time. And I feel that the innovation happening today is depending on a new tech stack as well. And so a lot of the legacy ways we're doing things, and even legacy cyber vendors, are going to have to keep up or they're going to go away. And so it's been a really interesting time in terms of how we're thinking about AI to improve productivity. And there's a huge appetite on how can we leverage AI, and it's unstoppable. And you're seeing it across the board at almost every company now.
So you touched on a couple things that I'm very excited to dive into in this conversation. First and foremost, as AI, just as a, like, if you think of it like a movement or a catalyst for so much, not just within kind of the AI technology vertical, but using it as a stepping stone for more, and also from a data governance perspective. So excited to dive into those topics as we navigate this today. Now, Patrick, I know you've been working on AI projects for a lot longer than just the last 2 years, and Rinki as well. But so first and foremost, would love some context. You have such a really great story around working on AI. Can you give us some context on this new wave in the AI revolution and the needs that the new iterations of AI like LLMs fit in comparison to what we've seen in the past, and what limitations we've seen around them versus other approaches?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've been working with AI in some form or another since the late 90s. And back then it was just big database stuff and trigger events and, customer databases and building out sort of the golden data set. Certainly was governance with respect to it, but, a lot of this stuff was on premise, and, we weren't as mature really thinking about personal data and the rest. This revolution that we're in the middle of now, and a lot of the other AI projects I worked on, it's not personally identifiable information. It's more business specific, business context. You can decouple things, and you can hide things pretty well. But now everyone's talking to LLMs, and they're one of the big fears is business specific IP, intellectual property, trade secrets, all sorts of things could wind up, in queries, flying out there, exposed, and there's been a rush to sort of assure everyone that the governance is in place. And that's just really well timed with the release of the CSF 2.0, promoting governance up. I think governance just more generally has become much more of a focus. You see it in the SEC regulations as well. You need an engaged leadership in order to solve some of these problems, because a lot of the adoption is going to be rapid, right? And there's going to be leakage. There's going to be leakage. Inside the models, there's going to be drift. We don't know to some extent what some of the models are doing. Are they safe? So there's a lot of things on the table because everything's moving so quickly.
So it's interesting that you bring up data governance and the CSF 2.0. So as Rinki alluded to, a lot of the lot of the AI, this new wave in AI has kind of driven a broader discussion around data governance as well. So, and as a result, we've actually seen a slowdown in AI projects at the enterprise level due to limited data governance. So simultaneously, as you said, Patrick, we saw the release of the NIST CSF 2.0, which included the addition of a six framework function governance. Now, we've seen organizations leverage this to bring cybersecurity even more into the boardroom and engage board and executive leadership around improved cybersecurity as a business driver. It appears now is the time to define a strong data governance program to future-proof enterprises, not just from what we're seeing in AI right now, especially around LLMs, but even more so kind of building that foundation for whatever comes next. So Rinky, firstly, do you agree that, now is the time to really start building that stronger foundation for the future? And if so, how can security leaders use the awareness that we're seeing with CEOs and board members around technologies like ChatGPT to have a bigger conversation around not just kind of the flash in the pan, but around like long-term sustainable data governance?
Yeah, it's so interesting that you bring this up, because how long have we as security practitioners been preaching about data governance, right? And it's oftentimes taken a back seat over other priorities, right or wrong. But now with people wanting, like in your companies, your partners want AI capabilities, you can't do it well unless you've got proper data governance first. And so a lot of the data governance initiatives are accelerating that we need to have good data hygiene if we're going to build really strong AI capabilities. And so I think that at companies that really are accelerating AI implementation, whether it's a consumption of AI or building AI, you're starting to see an acceleration of data governance initiatives, which is exciting as a security practitioner. And I'm sure privacy and other legal folks are also finally able to go and drive these programs forward.
Mm-hmm. So, Patrick, I want to step back for a second for folks that might not know or might not necessarily be as aware of the govern function within the CSF. Can you give us a quick definition of the new sixth function of the CSF, govern, and how it fits into the other five functions as well as the CSF at large?
Sure. Yeah. It's pretty simple. I mean, governance is, is your leadership paying attention, more or less. That's the simplest way to think of it. It was in the original versions of the CSF. It was in the identify.gv category. And there were several subcategories, but NIST, along with a lot of the rest of the legislative and regulatory agencies, have realized that an engaged leadership is absolutely critical to getting things done, right? So you see the promotion of it out of a category and into a function. So it just basically became a function. Then they migrated some of the other subcategories as well. So a risk management strategy, that's got to be under govern. That really harmonizes well with the SEC regulations. So that's is your C-suite, is your board engaged in the conversation? There's some other subcategories and categories, roles and responsibilities, right? With respect to, how it flows down throughout the organization, policy, the setting of policy, the awareness of policy, the signing off on policy. There's a lot of, sort of an embedded due care concept here, fiduciary responsibility, oversight as well. That goes without saying. And then, I remember when NIST said in 2018 that supply chain was hot. Ron Ross, he was kind of joking, but at the same time it was hot. But it wound up in IDSC, so it was just another category, right? It's now its own, its own with under governance. So again, the awareness of the different functions within the business, does it roll up to leadership?
Right. So Rinky, I want to zoom in a little bit closer. When we talk about we're kind of seeing two different sides of the governance coin take shape as it relates to AI. So how do you compare data governance to AI governance?
Yeah,
Especially given this inflection point for security leaders, what should be prioritized for folks that might be playing catch up right now?
yeah, and so I think there's a lot of similarities between data governance and AI governance, but then there's also a divergence, right? So the focus of data governance, when I think about it, is primarily around the management, quality, and security of the data within the organization, and making sure that you're following regulations like GDPR and CCA and ensuring that there's compliance around your data and make sure that your data is trustworthy and reliable. And then that's enabled by informed decision making with compliance and legal regulatory requirements. AI's got a little bit of a different twist on it, right? Because you've got ethical concerns, legal concerns, operational management of your AI systems. You have to have policies to ensure that AI is used in a fair way. And so I think and then there's also questions around like transparency on your algorithms, bias mitigation. I think where the intersection is AI relies on data. And so your AI governance is absolutely going to rely on your data governance and ensuring that you get that right, because the quality and the integrity of your data is directly going to impact the performance and fairness of your AI models. And so that's the way that I think of that. And if you have poor data governance, it's going to lead to biased or unreliable AI outcomes. And so that's, I think, the major difference in how to think about them, is that there are similarities, and that's like where the data is relied upon, but then there's a differentiation in terms of how the data is used in the algorithms.
Right. So I have a bit of a hot take question for both of you. So especially as we've seen the concept of AI governance really come into focus, especially given the LLM craze here. Data governance obviously outlives that um for a host of reasons. But out of curiosity, what do you two see? And Rinky, we'll start with you just as a continuation from your previous answer. What do you see for the future of AI governance? Do you see that getting folded into data governance? And alternatively, do you see the AI governance practices that we're adopting today being capable of supporting the next iteration of AI technology that comes after LLMs?
I think I think we're going to need separate AI governance standards. I think data governance standards exist. I think they're going to mature, but we're going to need AI governance standards. It was an interesting question that I was on another panel, and one of the audience members had asked around where can I go for AI governance standards? And it's like companies have their own. But there's no, it's all over the place. And then there's not really mandates around this either yet. So I think it's going to have to evolve significantly. And I think as there's more adoption, we're going to see incidents that's going to drive these mandates and better standards. So I think there's a lot more to come on this front. We're at a very immature state from my experience.
Right. Patrick, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I agree with Rinky. We do have the EU AI Act. We've got the NIST AI RMF here stateside, but it's still early days. For me, I still work with data, and it's all about data quality for me. Is the source, is it cleaned? Is it scrubbed? Is it prepared to be consumed by machine learning or AI? Part of that consideration is naturally, does it contain information that, could, if it leaks, could be, damaging to individuals or to the organization. So it's all of a piece, but the regulatory, and legal and legislative bodies haven't quite caught up yet. So we're going to be figuring this out for some time to come.
So staying on the topic of the AI RMF, how do you rectify the broader approach of AI governance versus AI governance, and kind of by extension, how like the kind of playing on that framework angle? How do you see the relationship between the AI RMF and the CSF 2.0 with the govern function play in cybersecurity programs as they continue to adopt and be faced with new AI technologies coming into the enterprise, whether that's on the security side or whether that's in other business units?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, they should play nice together. That's in practice, I think you're still going to see organizations and struggle to do this. It's got to be done. The technology is moving very quickly. On our side, I don't think there's any problem at all harmonizing the AI RMF with the new govern function. I mean, you just sort of look at the requirements and you map and you're good, and the mappings exist. So but in practice, not in theory, there's still a lot to be done. I don't think stateside, I don't think we ever really adopted GDPR as well as we ought to have. A lot of our multinationals obviously have had to do that. But when you look at, how privacy regulation has been applied in the States, it's still a bit of a Gordian knot.
Right. And so, Rinky, from a practical perspective, how have frameworks like the AIRMF, the CSF, et cetera, and feel free to add any other in there. I know you brought up the CCPA as well. How have those frameworks played a role in your work implementing AI thus far?
Not significantly. I think, and again, I think every company is different, but from what I see, that a lot of companies have slowed down their AI implementation build, especially maybe not on the consumption side, but on the build side. And it's more to focus on data quality and hygiene, and let's clean that up and make sure we understand the implications. So I feel like in a year or two from now, we'll be in a much different state where we're looking at these standards, and security folks are getting deeper with the standards, but we're not quite there yet. Right now, a lot of this is
Right.
still on the consumption side, as we're looking at contracts and vendor management, and what we're looking at, and a lot of our compliance and third-party risk folks are looking at those frameworks to ensure that our third parties are following this. But from a build perspective, I've seen a little bit of a slowdown to ensure that data governance is in place.
So that's good segue here. So an adage that we hear a lot in public relations is never let a good crisis go to waste. So to the extent that, we're looking at this inflection point for AI, and, we're having this buzz around a technology that expands beyond just technologists here. Again, board members, CEOs, CFOs, everyone seems to be talking about LLMs right now. And so, Rinky, I know you spend a lot of time mentoring up and coming security leaders. So in that vein, how can security leaders use the hype of LLMs and generative AI to build something that lasts longer than this round of hype?
Yeah, I think you have to build a data governance program. I think that's where it all starts. And that once you have that data governance once you start building that out, you'll need a committee or a group of folks or stakeholders within the company that might end up becoming the same folks you work with on your AI governance and your principles too. So I think it's really first important as a company to make sure that you have data governance objectives really outlined in a strong way. You create a framework or adopt a framework, ensure you have data stewardship. You create policies around what you want your data collection, your storage, processing, all those components to look like. And then you need some way to inventory and classify your data. You need to make sure that you implement data quality controls, and then partner with your privacy and your legal team to ensure that you're baking in any type of regulations that you have to abide to, like GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, whatever that might be. And then make sure you have the right security protocols around it. And then this is where you may want some ethical guidelines as a part of what you're trying to build out as a part of your data governance, which would help with what you're going to think about when you start going deeper into AI. And then, of course, implementing data governance technologies. There's so many tools out there right now that will help you with data governance. There may even be AI specific tools that can help, ensuring that you have continuous monitoring and auditing around your data, and that you're actually ensuring that what you've said you're going to do is what you're doing. And then I think last is ensuring that you build a culture around this, that there's good training, there's good engagement around with stakeholders around treatment of data, and then creating a program that's adapting as your environments change. And so that's like high level kind of 10 or 11, whatever I said, kind of steps, I think, in thinking about data governance. And it's not easy to pull off. It takes a lot of coordination. There's going to be slowness in the beginning. You have to get it right. But I think once you get to the point where you're implementing tools and you have that ongoing monitoring, it's going to help feed into building that culture and everything else that you set off to build. But that beginning part is, I think, the key part and requires a lot of influence across many different stakeholders in the company.
Right. And especially something that jumped out at me, and I know this is a passion spot for you, is kind of like building that security culture aspect. And again, kind of that back to the kind of never let a good crisis go to waste. You know, we are in the moment like we have a moment where technology is moving the culture in general. And you can use that, to your point, as a springboard for kind of catalyzing that conversation around, okay, think about the data that's going into this. Like everyone's using it anyway, but think about it. So you actually have a very tangible example that most folks will be able to relate to around security, which is typically, you know, historically has been a very rare concept. Up until recent past few years, it's been very abstracted, but now we have some very tangible examples to say this is what happens when things go wrong.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up here, Patrick, same question for you. Never let a good crisis go to waste. How can security leaders use the hype of LLMs and generative AI to build something that lasts longer than this round of hype?
Yeah, I think Rinky covered that very well. I mean, you know, in some ways, the AI revolution, which, you know, to me is really just sort of, you know, an obsession over large language models, which are very interesting types of artificial intelligence. You know, it's putting eyes on the problem, data. And I work with data. You know, I know all the different dimensions of data. You know, the way you treat data is very important. The way you clean it, the way you scrub it, the way you prepare it for machine learning algorithms, very important. But it's equally as important to understand that the data integrity has to be maintained throughout its life cycle. It's equally important to understand that data sometimes contains, you know, PII or EFI or, you know, these other dimensions that have to be protected. So for me, I think the increased attention on data, the value of it, I think is important, and it's driving engagement, and it's getting leadership, you know, engaged to sort of help put some things into place that will ensure that, you know, we handle it in the best possible way. So I'm actually pretty optimistic because you know, data's come back into the conversation lately, and I think that's great, you know, because I'm a data guy.
Definitely. Well, I know as we wrap up here, any parting thoughts from either of you? This has been an incredible conversation, very insightful. Any parting thoughts?
And I think we're in a kind of new era of transformation with AI and innovation that's happening at speed and scale now. And I think it's going to be a new era for cybersecurity too. So this was a great conversation and really timely.
Yeah, I agree, and thank you, Rinky, for joining. You know, it's always illuminating hearing your thoughts on this, and you know, I second that. I think it's very exciting. I think, you know, when a technology is racing out in front, there are definitely risks, but it's also bringing a lot of attention to some of the longstanding problems we all have to solve together. So I'm optimistic.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate the time from both of you. For anyone interested in learning more about our work with the CSF 2.0, the AI RMF, as well as the host of a lot of the topics that we covered today, feel free to visit us at cybersaint.io or reach out info@cybersaint.io. Patrick, Rinky, thank you so much for the time. We look forward to seeing you both again soon.
Thanks, Ethan.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.